You reach for a glass of water, not filtered water, whatever comes out of the tap in a city of 1 million people, treated with chlorine and fluoride and pushed through pipes to your kitchen at roughly 60 pounds per square inch. You drink it without thinking. You've done it 10,000 times. Now imagine the same thirst, same dry throat, same need. But the year is 10,000 BC, and the nearest river runs brown after 3 days of rain. Upstream, something died in it last week. This is not a hypothetical. This is Tuesday for most of human history. So how did ancient humans survive drinking water that, by modern standards, should have killed them? The obvious answer, that they simply didn't have a choice and died young, is half right, and mostly wrong. Archaeological evidence from at least a dozen sites across Europe and the Near East suggests early humans had developed remarkably sophisticated strategies for managing water quality long before anyone understood what bacteria actually was. In 2019, researchers analyzing sediment cores from the Adelhike settlement in central Turkey, one of the world's earliest known towns, inhabited from roughly 7500 to 5700 BCE, found clear evidence that residents had separated their water sources by function. Wells used for drinking sat at measurable distances from areas used for animal keeping and waste disposal. The average separation at the site was roughly 15 to 20 meters, not far by modern standards, but precise enough to suggest intentional spatial planning driven by observed cause and effect. People had noticed, generation after generation, that drinking close to waste made people sick. They acted on it without needing a germ theory to explain why. This is the first and most important thing to understand about ancient water management. The knowledge that bad water kills is older than writing, older than agriculture, possibly older than modern human cognition itself. What changed over millennia wasn't awareness. It was the sophistication of the response. Here's where it gets strange. Boiling water was known and used in prehistoric contexts, but it was not the dominant solution, partly because fuel was not unlimited, and partly because boiled water, stored improperly in animal skin vessels or porous clay, could recontaminate within hours. The real workhorse of ancient water safety was something far less glamorous: fermentation. In 2018, archaeochemist Patrick McGovern at the University of Pennsylvania published analysis of ceramic residue from Jiahu, a Neolithic village in China's Henan province, dating to around 7000 BCE. The residue confirmed the presence of a fermented beverage made from rice, honey, and hawthorn fruit. Alcohol content was estimated at roughly 4 to 9%. At those concentrations, alcohol kills or inhibits most of the waterborne pathogens, specifically the gram-negative bacteria like E. coli and Salmonella, that would otherwise colonize standing water within 24 to 48 hours of collection. Ancient humans weren't drinking fermented beverages primarily to get intoxicated. They were drinking them because fermented beverages didn't make them vomit and die. The distinction matters enormously. What looks like ritual or recreation in the archaeological record may have been, at its origin, public health infrastructure in a clay pot. But there's a problem with the fermentation theory. Not everyone drank it. Children under a certain age were often excluded from alcohol-containing beverages across multiple ancient cultures, documented in clay tablet records from Mesopotamia as early as 2100 BC, and in Egyptian papyrus records describing separate drink rations by age group. So what did children drink? The answer, confirmed by stable isotope analysis of dental enamel from Bronze Age burial sites in Germany, is breast milk, well past the age most modern Western parents would consider, and something more surprising, heavily diluted fruit juices and herb-steeped water that functioned as primitive antimicrobial solutions. A 2020 study led by researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig analyzed 70 samples of dental calculus, the hardened plaque on ancient teeth, from European sites spanning roughly 3000 to 500 BCE. They found traces of tannin producing plants in a striking 61% of samples. Tannins, the astringent compounds found in oak bark, pomegranate rind, and grape skin, have documented bacteriostatic properties. They don't kill bacteria the way alcohol does, but they slow reproduction rates enough to extend safe consumption windows by hours. Ancient humans were, functionally, brewing antimicrobial teas without ever naming them as such. So what about the cases where none of these options were available? Across dozens of hunter-gatherer societies, both ancient and those studied by anthropologists into the 20th century, one behavioral pattern appears with remarkable consistency: the preference for moving water over still water and spring water over river water. This isn't instinct in the genetic sense. It's learned cultural knowledge transmitted the same way cooking techniques are transmitted, through observation, repetition, and the quiet deaths of people who got it wrong. Biologist Mark Pagel at the University of Reading has argued in published work that humans show an innate, likely evolutionarily ancient, mild aversion to still, dark, or cloudy water, a preference wired in before any explicit cultural teaching kicks in. The aversion is measurable. In a 2008 study he co-authored, subjects shown photographs of water samples rated clear, fast-moving water as significantly more appealing than still water, with identical chemical composition. The preference is not rational. It's inherited. Hundreds of thousands of years of ancestors who trusted the wrong puddle may have written that bias into human neurology, and yet everyone assumes ancient populations died in droves from waterborne illness. The truth is more complicated, and the numbers are genuinely surprising. Paleopathological analysis of skeletal remains from the Neolithic period, conducted by archaeologist Charlotte Roberts at Durham University, found that chronic waterborne disease, evidenced by bone lesions, growth stunting, and enamel hypoplasia, consistent with repeated childhood illness, was present but not universal. Roughly 30 to 40% of analyzed populations showed evidence of repeated gastrointestinal illness. Significant, but not the near total mortality most people would assume for populations drinking unfiltered river water. The explanation lies partly in exposure-based immunity. Children who survived repeated low-dose exposure to common waterborne pathogens during early childhood developed durable gut immunity to those strains by adulthood, a mechanism comparable to what modern immunologists call colonization resistance. Ancient adults were not simply lucky. They were immunologically trained from infancy by the very water that killed their less fortunate neighbors. The water didn't get cleaner. The people got harder. This is the synthesis that the obvious answer misses entirely. Ancient humans survived unsafe water not through one strategy, but through a layered system. Spatial separation of contamination sources, fermented beverages as daily antimicrobial protection, plant compound infusions for the very young, cultural knowledge about water source selection, and finally, a population-level immune adaptation forged through generations of survivors. No single invention, no single discovery. A slow, brutal, generational curriculum taught entirely by consequence. And the deeper truth is this: the human body, given enough time and enough exposure, will negotiate a working arrangement with almost anything the environment throws at it. What looks like survival against impossible odds from the outside is, at the biological level, just evolution doing what it has always done, filtering out the ones who couldn't adapt and sharpening the ones who could. Picture that river again. Brown water. Something upstream that died in it. The same thirst you had this morning when you reached for the tap. The people who stood at that riverbank did not have chlorine. They did not have germ theory. They did not have any of the 200 plus years of public health infrastructure that quietly keeps you alive every time you fill a glass. What they had was each other, the accumulated knowledge of every ancestor who watched someone drink the wrong water and remembered. Passed down not in books, not in labs, but in habit, in ritual, in the particular taste of a fermented clay pot passed to children before they were old enough to ask why. Clean water is not a modern invention. The knowledge of how to find it, protect it, and survive without it is the oldest science humanity ever practiced. We did not conquer unsafe water. We were shaped by it, and the deepest record of that shaping isn't in any museum. It's in the gut that clenches when you taste something wrong, and the instinct, older than language, that makes you trust the moving water over the still.